So, my name is Kenny Renaud, and I am mentally and physically exhausted right now. Just finished a full day's worth of work, and I am also just completed my first interaction with a new student that I began working with. My regular student that I've been completing all of these assignments for, my assessment, my textbook analysis, and my comprehension strategy for. Javius, he is with his biological mother for the holiday and up until the next couple of days. And so I had an impromptu first time meeting with another one of my I work at an apartment community, and one of my residents' children volunteered to work with me for this assignment, and we worked for about an hour and a half on the book Just So Stories by Rudyard Kipling, and it was a very no words can even begin to describe. First, it was kind of like starting from a blank slate, establishing that relationship, making sure she was comfortable. The entire time, her mother stayed with me, which was a very different interaction than when I had with Javius. We were on a one-to-one, so it was nice because I got to incorporate the mother into the lessons and into the strategies that I was teaching her, and she got to be involved into the activities that we did. And I think that they're going to go home together and work well on the strategies that we had set up. The student's name is Imani Haynes, and her mother, Ebony Haynes, came in here with me, and we worked together because Imani has several children, and Ebony has several children, and Imani is one of her children that are struggling with reading comprehension. So I wasn't able to assess and verify that was the case, or if it was a memory problem, or what aspect, where she was causing or losing herself while she was reading. So, I briefly just looked at the book and we discussed it, and we discussed her interests and her likes, and I quickly knew that this was not a book that she would pick out on her own. It was a donation from her teacher, Mr. Perkins, at her elementary school. She attends Lewis Elementary School as well. And it's a book about what seems to me, just looking overall at the title and looking at the synopsis of the book, the theme seems to talk about the story of various animals on evolution and the way they've changed over time. We only worked on a few pages. I didn't want to make it feel like work, and I really expected to only spend a few minutes with her, maybe about 20 to 30 minutes, and it ended up being about an hour and 30-minute session, which at the end of the session, Imani asked how long it had been, like 20-30 minutes, and I told her, and she was blown away that she had so much fun and time had gone by that quickly while she was reading. So what we started with, I explained to her that this was not tutoring, this wasn't anything that she was required to do. She was here to help me practice, because I was going to be a future teacher, and I'm going to be a future teacher. So we began talking about her disinterest in this book, and how what I'm going to work with her is going to help her potentially be interested in this book, and if not, still help her read the book at the level that she needs to read it to be successful, if for a book report or for a future exam, or just to build her knowledge while reading about these various animals. We started with visual imagery. We kept this at the most basic level. We did not begin with reading. And much like what I explained while I was going over my comprehensive strategy, we started out of the context of reading. So I had her envision an elephant, just because it was the first thing that I saw here. So we envisioned an elephant, and I probed her for questions as to the surroundings of the elephant, the size of the elephant, what color of the elephant, and then I slowly asked her to modify certain elements, that's how tired I am, of the elephant. For instance, the color started off as a gray elephant, and she changed it a few times. Some of the times were a little loopy. She'd forget what color it was prior to, but eventually we got ourselves back on the same track, the same page. I was able to watch her transition. She was able to recall the transitions that she made, and she had some fun, adding the polka dots and the clothes and the little bonnet onto her elephant. Once we did that, we immediately jumped into reading, with me reading to her and her closing her eyes and visualizing her mother partaking in this as well. And she was not quickly able to do this while I was reading it. She wasn't able to just tell me what it is that she saw as I probed her for explanations or for a description of what she was visualizing it, I could tell that she was coming up with her responses as she was saying it. So I knew that we had to go a little bit deeper. So I read the story again, and as I did it, I did a think aloud, explaining to her what I saw and asking her right then and there what it is that she was saying. And so we both visualized. The story began with a whale and a small fish, and we described various forms of whales that we've seen and different types of fish, and I likened the fish that I was visualizing to Nemo, and she eventually started saying that yes, she sees a clownfish as well. So we described the orange and white and black clownfish until the story told us that it was not a clownfish, it was a different type of fish. And so we both agreed that the fish would be a gray fish. We visualized the setting and the first events of this story, and we went on for just a few pages. And as we did this, I wanted to take it a step further, so we began some questioning. I wanted to tell her about the benefits of questioning out of the context of reading. So we played 10 questions, and this was a really interesting experience because, one, I didn't have particular topics set up for 10 questions, and I believe it was her first time playing first questions. So we had a couple of mulligan start overs when she asked 2 specific questions, or when she asked questions that really showed that she wasn't really processing the answers from the previous questions. But eventually we got ourselves to a stride, and they were able to figure out the things that I was trying to get them to figure out, and then apply that ability to the questions that I would ask her in terms of anticipation for what was going on in the story. So we took the context and the summary and the understandings of what we'd read to try to predict what would be coming up next in the story, or to learn a little bit more about what's going on in the story. During this time, we learned the difference between a mammal and a fish. We learned the difference between a sea, a pond, the ocean, the swimming pool, different things like that. So using the think aloud along with these questions and visual imagery, she was able to get a deeper understanding, and we were all actually, I learned quite a few things as well during this process. The next step that we took while reading this story, because I could tell that there were still reservations, there were still areas where she wasn't quite seeing the movie that I wanted her to see in her mind. So we tried another element, which was the inquest dramatization. I asked her to play, Imani to play the role of the fish, and her mother played the role of the whale while I was reading the story, and we would reread certain areas until their personalities really fleshed out and they started to really overact, and they had lots of fun with it and lots of laughs. And so we continued on, and I think we actually only progressed through about 2 or 3 pages into the story, but we've gotten all the characters in the story. We met a man. We know what he looks like, what he's dressed in, from the perspective of the whale and from the fish, what that man looks like, how these characters have interacted, what's happened when the whale and the man have interacted. We know as far as what's inside of the whale's mouth, and we had a fun little activity, part of the dramatization. We turned off all the lights, and we had Imani act out all the actions that the man took place when he was trying to escape from the whale. I did not videotape Imani during this process. It would have been an hour and 30 minutes worth of a video, and it was my first interaction with her. I didn't have that quite connection. She didn't have that trust in me. I was a complete stranger. I did have a really good relationship with her mother, my resident, but I wanted to respect that, and I didn't think that having that camera on during that time would have gotten us to the level that we got to when we really got into the crux of this book. Imani is interested in dance. That is her passion, and so learning about various types of animals isn't exactly what she has an interest in. But I think at the end she was saddened that I was asking her to let me borrow the book so that I could refer to it and use it as part of this presentation recap and as part of my summary paper. So I really think she is looking forward to continuing on to teach her brothers and sisters and maybe use them as part of her inquest dramatization, or to challenge them in playing Stump the Teacher during the questioning process, and to help them visualize the type of things and have fun changing. Now, some of the experiences that I got out of this, you think that you're explaining something a certain way, or you ask a question and you've gone over it, and yet, in a child's mind it could be a completely different thing, and you come across aspects where you have to stop and have a mini lesson just teaching a certain concept to help them move on to the point where you're going to get them to progress. So it was interesting that, everything here was pretty much impromptu, but I found myself having to come up with several other mini lessons outside of all this just to help her really fully comprehend what I was teaching her to do, not necessarily just comprehension in what's going on in the story. So finding a balance for those two was very interesting, and I hope that I will be able to continue to work on with Imani. I hope that she is willing to continue forth, and because it was a very different experience from working with Javis. Now, I don't know if I want to continue using this book. I'll have to do a textbook analysis on here, because there were concepts and words that I came across that I think were deliberately misspelled to kind of go with the theme that they were underwater. The way the way they spelled the word citizen looked very much like a crustacean, or certain types of fish, or certain qualities of a human being. I'll have to do some research myself. So I guess the big point would have been if I was more prepared, but this was a kind of impromptu and backup resource for me, considering that I found out fairly recently that Javis was not going to be available for a full week to work with me for this final strategy project. But I do still look forward to working with him in regards to the Alvin Ho books that we've gone so far through, and I want to see if, now that I've gone through this process and I've learned what are the best ways to kind of introduce the concept, to model the process, to teach it, to then test to see if they've gotten it and to see how well it's applying for them. I want to see how efficiently I'm able to get these concepts, these strategies into my students' brains. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me ramble, and I hope that you've enjoyed the other presentations that you've received, and have a great summer.